The best MMA organizations in the world are the UFC and Bellator MMA. Both have most of the best MMA fighters in the world on their rosters and put on many events every year. We've always wondered if there would ever be a fight between the two promotions to see who has the better fighters. In this video, we'll discuss some UFC versus Bellator crossover fights for 2023. First off, Gegard Mousasi versus Israel Adesanya. Since they're both middleweight champions in their own promotions, it makes the most sense for them to fight each other. Gegard Mousasi is one of the most well-rounded fighters who has ever stepped into an octagon. The Dutch fighter has a background in kickboxing, but he also has a strong top ground game that he uses to slowly break down his opponents from the beginning to the end. He's the middleweight champion of Bellator MMA right now, but he has competed in the UFC and Dream. Israel Adesanya is the middleweight UFC champion and the best middleweight fighter in the world right now. The Nigerian's one of the most creative and fluid strikers in combat sports history, and he has capped his title 3 times. Adesanya's a lot like Anderson Silva, who ruled the middleweight division for almost a decade with his powerful strikes. He used to compete in kickboxing before moving on to mixed martial arts. It would be a lot of fun if these two middleweight champions fought each other. Both are skilled strikers with a background in kickboxing, and they can change their style based on the strengths and weaknesses of their opponents. Up next, Matt Hughes versus Ben Askren. When it comes to wrestling dream matchups, the idea of Matt Hughes and Ben Askren going head-to-head for wrestling supremacy is the most exciting. Hughes and Askren are two of the best and most powerful MMA grapplers in the history of combat sports, with Hughes being a 2-time UFC welterweight champion. From 2001 to 2006, he was the best fighter in his weight class. He won 12 of his 14 fights and lost 2 in 5 years. This makes him one of the best fighters in UFC history. Askren dominated Bellator MMA between 2010 and 2013. He won the welterweight title and kept it for 4 rounds. In 2014, he signed with ONE FC and also won the welterweight title. Askren was known for his strong offensive wrestling and top control, which he used to keep his opponents in check. It would have been a sight to see if these two champion wrestlers had faced off, followed by Patricio Pitbull versus Jose Aldo. Both dominated their weight classes for almost a decade and had impressive runs as featherweight champions. Aldo's the best featherweight champion in mixed martial arts history, and he's also a great Muay Thai striker. Pitbull's won 3 Bellator MMA titles and may be the best fighter in the history of the company. He's been promoted 20 times and has won against Daniel Strauss, Pat Curran, Daniel Weichel, and Michael Chandler. If 2 of the best featherweights of all time had fought in a super fight, it would have been something magical. Both are powerful strikers who can knock out any top-ranked featherweight and continue to fight at the highest level of mixed martial arts. Moving on to Eddie Alvarez versus Frankie Edgar. Eddie Alvarez and Frankie Edgar have 2 of the strongest chins in mixed martial arts history. Both have been hit and kicked hard by their opponents over the years, but they keep moving forward and never give up. Between 2009 and 2013, Alvarez was the best lightweight in Bellator. Later, he fought in the UFC and shocked everyone by knocking out Rafael dos Anjos to win the lightweight title. Even when he was at his best, he was always overlooked and thought of as the underdog. But boy, did he prove everyone wrong. This didn't stop him from becoming one of the best lightweight fighters in UFC history and proving his doubters wrong over and over again. If these two had fought, it might have been one of the year's best fights. Both of them would have kept moving forward while taking strong blows round after round. Next, Anderson Silva versus Michael Page. The entire world would be interested in a great fight between Anderson Silva and Michael Page. Both of them are some of the most creative strikers in history, and they have a variety of ways to knock out their opponents. Page has a long way to go before he can be compared to Anderson Silva, but he has the style and personality to become a big name in MMA. Anderson Silva is thought to be one of the 3 best fighters in the history of mixed martial arts. He's been the best striker to ever fight in the octagon and has ruled the middleweight division of the UFC for years. It would have been fun to see these two fight in a dream. Both are flashy and creative strikers who have won many knockouts that made people gasp. Not to mention Kamaru Usman versus Douglas Lima. Usman would almost certainly go into the cage as the heavy favorite. After losing his second fight, Usman has won 16 straight. That includes a recent run in which he took the UFC welterweight title from Tyron Woodley, knocked out Colby Covington, and beat Jorge Masvidal with a lot of hard work. But Lima's won the welterweight title in Bellator 3 times, which is an impressive feat in any promotion. Since 2010, Lima's gone 18-3, with a number of impressive wins. Lima's the best fighter in his promotion, and he's been the most important welterweight fighter in Bellator's history. Let's learn more about Patricio Freire versus Alexander Volkanovski. Freire has lost 3 times at featherweight, and 2 of those were by split decision. One of those was a loss to Joe Warren at Bellator 23. If a 10-8 score was used for the first round, when Freire was close to stopping the fight probably should have been a draw. Freire hasn't fought much at lightweight, but his 61-second knockout of Michael Chandler was a big surprise. Freire is a better fit for featherweight because a fight with Volkanovski's much more likely to be competitive than a fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov. Volkanovski's having a great run at featherweight. He beat Max Holloway twice in his last 2 fights, making him the featherweight champion. In the rematch, there was a lot of disagreement about how the fight was scored, and a fight with Freire would likely be close from bell to bell. Volkanovski would have a slight height advantage in this fight, which hasn't been the case with Holloway, who's much taller. Up next, Vadim Nemkov versus Dominic Reyes/Jan Blachowicz. This fight might be the one with the most unknowns. Nemkov was already on a winning streak when he beat Bader, who had a good chance of being one of the top 5 light heavyweights. His 5-fight winning streak in the Bellator cage against some of the best fighters on the Bellator roster has been impressive. Nemkov's lost twice in his career, both times in Rizin. One of those losses was to Yuri Prohaska, who's now a fighter in the UFC, but that fight was at heavyweight. Reyes should be the current UFC light heavyweight champion because he beat Jones and deserved to win. Blachowicz is on a roll right now, having won his last 3 fights, but he's lost 5 times in the UFC. Nemkov's performance against Bader showed that he could compete with anyone, and a fight with either Reyes or Blachowicz seems like it would be close to a coin flip. Moving on to Chris Cyborg versus Amanda Nunes. This fight took place at UFC 232 in December 2018 and was a disaster for Cyborg. In just 51 seconds, Nunes got a knockout that won her the UFC featherweight title. Why should they fight again? It's just that neither woman has another fight that's as interesting as the rematch. Even though Cyborg lost to Nunes in a shocking way, she's still one of the best featherweight fighters. Finally, Valentina Shevchenko versus Ilima-Lei Macfarlane. Shevchenko's the best fighter in the world in her division, without a doubt, but the fights in the octagon are, now, well, it's not hard. Shevchenko has only lost once in the UFC, and both times it was to Nunes at bantamweight. She's never lost a fight at flyweight, and has been making quick work of her opponents. Jennifer Maia is up next for Shevchenko. She earned a shot at the title by beating Joanne Calderwood, but her overall UFC record's only 3-2. Macfarlane's a fighter who has never lost. list. She's in a similar position to Shevchenko. That means she's won all 5 of her Bellator championship fights and is running out of new and interesting opponents. 6 of her 11 wins have been by submission, and she has also won 3 times by getting knocked out. She signed a 5-year contract extension with Bellator, giving her 10 more fights. So this fantasy scenario is the only way we can see Shevchenko fight McFarlane. And on that note, that's a wrap for this video. Which of these fights are you most looking forward to possibly seeing? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.